It's nearly Monday morning on the 3rd of March, and this is the final day of Romford Horror, and I've got the great pleasure of being joined by Gyeney. Did I get that correct? Yeah. Who's come all the way. Tell us about where you've come from.
From Los Angeles, Santa Monica specifically, where a lot of the movie was shot, actually.
So the film we've just watched is The Activated Man. Tell us, I know part of the story anyway, but tell us the origins of the story as far as you're concerned.
So my dog Louie died of cancer, and Louie was like a son to me. And so the jumping off point of the story was this is based on this truth that I experienced of grieving the loss of my son. And I was going through all this despair and turmoil, and then COVID hit, and I was locked in my apartment for 2 years, and I was just started developing this story and spun into some crazy directions.
And so, tell us about the process in terms of from developing that to maybe not necessarily the funding, but how you went along your journey from the original conception.
Sure. So I think because of COVID, it allowed me a lot of time to just kind of sit and reflect on drafts and kind of inject certain things. I was after Louis died, I became very fascinated with spiritualism and just studied all sorts of different belief systems and ideas. And there was actually a moment where I had a dream where Louis was in this dream, and he essentially told me, not in like the the dog movie CGI mouth told me, but told me to tell a story. And so I woke up and I was like, okay. And I started diving into all this stuff and researching, and so as I went along and discovered new things, it could help me kind of tweak certain facets of the story and make it more layered and richer. And I got very lucky with the financing, and I met an investor who really loved the concept, and we were off and running as soon as the COVID protocols kind of died down a little bit.
So, first of all, I really loved the visualization of the dog. There's two things about this. One is a unique concept. I can't think of anyone that's created a film off the back of such a scenario. And then two, as silly as it sounds, the dog in it just looks so lovely. Can you talk us through the decision to make the dog appear in that particular style?
Sure. So, one of the things that I would keep coming across was this idea of energy and how on the other side, everything is energy. And so the idea of these particles of energy kind of coming together and allowing Louis to kind of poke through the veil, so to speak, I thought would make an interesting look for a spirit that we haven't really seen too much of. So I modeled the dog. It's modeled after the real Louis, and there's these little clips that you see of Louis, and that's just stuff from my iPhone from over the years, and so it's a real Louis in the movie.
It's a beautiful connection there. I really enjoyed that. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you found your cast and how much involvement you had in that? Because, different films with different budgets, the director has different relationships with that. Can you talk us through that?
Sure. So one of the things that I try and do when I'm developing a concept is I think both creatively and business-minded together, so that as the concept is developing, I'm together marrying, like, okay, so this character I want to get a name for, so I want to structure him in the story so that when we shoot it, we can shoot him out in 5 days because it's going to be pretty expensive, that kind of thing. And then coming up with a cast that will justify the budget. We made this for $1 million, and an indie movie that's significant, right? And so I knew that if we were going to be able to justify that spend, we had to have an ensemble, because I wasn't going to be able to afford like a giant A-lister, right? So I had to get this ensemble of names that could together collectively justify that, And as I was researching that, I realized that, or discovered that there's these two horror icons, Tony Todd and Kane Hodder, are worth so much money in the horror marketplace. I mean, Kane, who is a good friend now, a sweet guy, you wouldn't think it, looking at him in his movies, but he's so sweet, and he'll go to these conventions and he'll walk out with like 50 grand and no one knows it, it's remarkable. So then I ended up reaching out to Tony's manager, and I told him it's a very unique film, it's very personal, and I wanted to meet with him and chat with him about Tony, and I connected really strongly with his manager, who's a good friend now, Jeff Goldberg, and he brought up to Tony and said, we're doing this movie. And so thankfully Tony agreed with him, and so that was a big piece of the puzzle, because once he was in, then it was very quickly everybody else kind of came on board. Sean Young, she's a very spiritual person, so when she read it, she was like, finally, something that I can really sink my teeth into that's in my field, what I love. So she was really on board. And Andrew Keegan, I worked with him before on a film called The Penitent Man, and so we're friends. He lives like 2 miles down the road from me, and so we were trying to find a project to come back together on, which was this one.
Slightly silly comment to make, unfortunately, here, but I think, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thought this, we all know Tony Todd is a tall man.
Yes.
But then there's that scene where they're having that conversation, like at the back of the apartment block.
Right.
And he's, he feels like he's twice the size of anybody else.
Right.
Was that a conscious decision to make him appear so, I appreciate he is tall.
Right. It's funny. It's funny. So Jamie Costa, who plays Orders, I had come across him through this viral Seed fan film that he did, where he did this, it's like a biopic pitch for Robin Williams, and it's like this incredible portrayal of Robin Williams. So I reached out to him, offered him the role, and never even meeting him in person. So I roll up to our first meeting, and I was like, oh, he's a little guy, he's 5'3".
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I just cast this guy with 6'5". This is going to be an interesting framing challenge, right? But so at first I was a little nervous about it, but then it ended up giving us a little bit of a David and Goliath thing, and playing into the mystery of, is Jeffrey trustworthy or not? And so it kind of fell into place, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that relationship of, is he someone you can trust? Is he someone you can't trust? There's all those messages that are saying this is someone you shouldn't trust from all the different characters. I really love that. Can you talk to us a little bit about the creation of the Fedora Man?
Yeah, so the Fedora Man, I kind of piggybacked off of this legend that is a pretty prevalent spiritual legend out there about the Hat Man, who thousands of people around the world, like the movie says, report seeing this strange shadowy figure with a kind of a big hat and red eyes in their bedroom or following around after these moments of great trauma or loss. And no one really kind of understands what these things are, if people are just having collective grief-induced hallucinations, or if this is a spiritual event where some dark thing is showing itself and feeding off of this sadness. But as I started getting into that, I thought, what an interesting villain that could be, but not just the Fedora Man, but having the Scooby-Doo reveal villain, using that myth to inspire fear and to kind of hide behind it to carry out his agenda.
Yeah. I really love that scene in the cinema.
Oh, yeah.
I just think, such a striking, the appearance, I just thought that was amazing. Obviously, we're not going to disclose too much here and now. What was the biggest challenge through making the film?
I mean, the whole thing, the production was the toughest one I've ever had to do. It's an extremely ambitious movie. Even though we had, what would seem like a good amount of money to make this movie, it was a very ambitious project. So we shot in 15 days, and we had 12K cameras. So in case we were running over, we could punch in on a shot and post. So we had that piece of coverage already. There were a lot of ways where we kind of cut corners to make sure that we could finish 15 days. But because we only had 15 days, and I mean, it's a 2-hour movie, there were a lot of, and we went over time a couple of days, but really we were sticking to this 12-hour turnaround. And 12-hour days, and I think it was just that the hustle and putting all these scenes in and really planning it out and making sure that every I's dotted and T's crossed before we entered production. It was just tough, and also there's a lot of dialogue, and you have these actors who are expected to carry these giant monologues, which sometimes that would cause a delay, and then we have to kind of work our way through it, but it's. We got there, but it was like going to war and making this movie. It was pretty intense. This beard was black when I started. I swear, it was.
Can you talk to us about I always think every single film has one of those revelationary moments. Was there a point in the film that you kind of got really excited because everything was coming together? Was there a point like that during the film?
In terms of making it, or in terms of the narrative?
In terms of making it.
It's kind of a complex question because I've made several features, and each of the movies that I've made has been it's 1 inch shy of really exploding, And so at this point where I am in my career, I don't want to say I'm jaded, but I'm cautiously optimistic and hopeful that maybe this will be the one that changes things, But I don't know, because I thought I had that the last time and the time before and the time before, and then the ceiling was just so high for these films. And so every project that I've done, I've sat in the editing room and I'm like, it really works. I'm so excited about this. I'm so proud of it. But then, the audience doesn't respond exactly how I hoped, or whatever, distribution issues, whatever. So I would say that in general, as we were going, I felt the scenes were working, but I was like, I don't know if I can trust myself. I don't know if I know that it's going to go somewhere. I hope it does. I do see this, and I look at my other work, and I think it's by far the best thing I've ever done. But is that enough? We'll find out.
Can you talk to us a bit more about this? I say a bit more. Can you talk to us a little bit about the score?
Sure, yeah. So I was very, very heavily involved with the score, and the reason is because the movie was so ambitious. One of the ways that we had to cut corners was, hiring, for example, Cesar, who was a brilliant musician and composer, but wasn't experienced with dramatic cinema and the dramatic effect and all that kind of stuff, and understanding the scenes and how the music should play under certain moments. So we worked very closely together. I had a very meticulous temp score from other films, constructed, and we went through it together, beat by beat, kind of really making sure that it was as strong as it could be. And he came up with some really beautiful melodies, like the Louis theme. I really love that. That's my favorite piece of music in the whole thing. And so he really worked his butt off on the score, and he pulled it off. I think it's a good piece.
Yeah, I mean, the closing thing, I love that score. I think I love anything that kind of channels the 80s in some way. That's what I think of. I hear the score and it kind of reminds me of To Live and Die in LA. I really, I think it's a really powerful thing that you've managed to deliver. Was it conscious to look at that kind of retro sound?
Yeah, I love 90s cinema and 80s cinema, and I grew up, as a 1986, grew up through the 90s. I miss the way films were made back then. They just made differently. And we so rarely come across that theme song that you can remember when you're walking out of the cinema, And for example, when the Fedora Man comes out of the mist and comes up to Oars, right? In most horror movies, I think most filmmakers today would probably approach that moment with eerie, atmospheric, kind of ominous sounds, creepy factor. I was like, no, this is the Fedora Man theme. This is where the Fedora Man theme is, right? And so that's a very 90s approach, and I love that films in the 90s would do things like that. Going back to the Nightmare on Elm Street series, or Jason, Friday the 13th. They all had these iconic themes, and so I wanted to inject that flavor as much as I could while doing something a little different too.
So I asked you earlier on about a kind of revelationary moment in a positive sense. What was the hardest part of the film to deliver?
The hardest part of the film was the visual effects. So there are a lot of little subtle VFX touches that there's something like 500 VFX shots in the movie, or maybe more, maybe a little more than that. But a lot of them are invisible VFX, and it's like nip and tuck here, things like that. Oh my gosh, there's a crew cable on the ground in the shot. What the heck, stuff like that. But I found that when you're working, money talks at the end of the day. When you have money to pay people to do the work, they will work and get it done for you, and it'll look great. When you are stretching your budget really far, it's hard to ask people to deliver miracles for you, right? And so I think the toughest part was, I had these 10 or 11 VFX artists, and I really had to push for getting high quality stuff, because I knew that if the VFX was gonna, not work, if the dog didn't work, the movie falls apart essentially. So I really had to push for that, and I hope they don't hate me too much, but I think it works.
And what are you going to be working on next?
So I have this conspiracy thriller called The Unknown Sun. It's got Patrick Schwarzenegger attached to it, which I'm really excited about. I grew up loving Arnold, and so it's kind of like it's like The Firm meets The Boys from Brazil, kind of a crazy Third Reich thing. And then I also have a spin-off of this film it's called The Red Vision, which is this other supernatural thriller that connects to almost kind of like how The Conjuring, like Annabelle movies are connected in like this shared universe, so to speak. Those two projects are next up.
Another sort of semi-silly question, because you wouldn't be able to play a little bit if you were on a desert island trapped with 3 films. What would you watch? What would you take with you?
Well, my favorite movie of all time is Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Special Edition. So I would definitely take that. I would take Moulin Rouge, because I love that movie. And JFK.
Interesting. Yeah, I was surprised by Moulin Rouge, but impressed.
I'm a big softie, couldn't you tell? I love movies that make me feel. And Moulin Rouge is magic. It's a magic.
Yeah, very emotive film. I haven't asked you about this, but I'm going to try and force you into doing something based on the fact that we've got cameras here. I've got 2 posters down here, and I would like 2 questions for Nicholas on the film. Do you like the way I'm looking at you, Oliver? It's like you're right at the front. I can see the cogs. And what we're going to do is, with your permission, I'm going to get you to sign one for each question. Have you got a question?
I'm a huge fan of Tony Todd. I love his movies, and I would like to know how did you meet him? How did you get in contact with him?
So one thing I mentioned, I met with his manager, Jeff Goldberg, and Jeff connected us because I connected with his manager very strongly, and so then Jeff kind of nudged Tony, hey, take a pay cut, do this movie, and so then I met with Tony, and we connected well, and that's it. That's that simple. So I think it was easier because we had the money already, the financing, so I can go to these people with an offer and say, hey, we've already got the money in the bank. It's not like you're trying to get them attached and then playing that to get the financing. So they take you a little more seriously when the financing is there.
Okay, I'll get that signed in a second. We've got one other poster. Can we have one other question?
Yeah. Hi, I was just wondering if there's any chance of the turn as a Fedora man.
I do have a trilogy outlined, and it's pretty nuts. I would say like the first one is like the first Terminator, small and intimate, and then the sequel will be like T2, crazy, and the third one is like, Return of the Jedi kind of thing. Scaled down to indie budget standards, right? So the plan would be for the second one to be kind of like a 2 to 5 million-ish, and then like a big 10 million crazy finale. Basically right now, so we're in talks with a distributor that wants to put it in theaters, and if the movie does well, not in theaters, because most likely that would be a miracle if it did, but if it does well on VOD streaming, etc., then the plan would be for them to produce the sequels.
Okay, I don't think I've got a poster, but is there any other questions?
Yeah, I've got.
Go.
So you give me a personal story, obviously, but I wondered, while we were making this, was there any sort of catharsis for yourself, and was there anything you learned about yourself while putting this story to the screen?
Where's my eyeliner? I can't see if it's live. Oh, okay, I got you. Yes, definitely. Yes, it was a very personal story, and making this movie was like almost masochistic in a way. I was on set crying behind camera as they're delivering these speeches about Louis and all this stuff, and I cried watching the movie tonight. I've seen it 1,000 times, because it's my dog. It's Louis, and I'll always miss him. And it did give me catharsis in the sense that it made me, the process of making this movie helped keep him close to me in a way, and it also gave me an idea that maybe I'll see him again at some point.
Amazing, thank you. Can we give Nicholas a big round of applause, please? And Oliver, and was that you, Zoltan? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind coming to the front, I'll get Nicholas to sign you a poster.
Gold. So, Oliver, you come forward and let Nicholas say what you'd like to write on him. O-L-I-V-E-R? Yes, you can.
To remember.
He's scared me a lot. Very much fun during the screening. I loved it. And congratulations. Amazing.
It's Hungarian.